Will democracy survive the tsunami of right-wing dark money coming this fall? And, you know, I start out with the story of Sushila Jayapal, Pramila Jayapal's sister, who here in Portland was a very successful local politician. She was on the board of Metro, which is this kind of tri-county umbrella governing agency. Got a lot of good stuff done. She's a solid progressive. However, she had been critical of Israel's destruction of Gaza. And so AIPAC came in without telling anybody. I mean, they created a front group that had a nice sounding name. I forget the name, but something like Americans for Prosperity or something. I mean, obviously wasn't that, but something like that. And they created the group the day after the deadline. You know, had they created it a day or two earlier, they would have had to disclose where their money came from before the election. The way they set it up, they didn't have to disclose where their money came from until after the election. So we didn't know that it was the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. All we knew was, some $7-8 million in dark money had just flooded into Oregon, into this very local race. Who's going to represent Oregon's 3rd district in Congress, because Earl Blumenauer is retiring. And they wiped her out. I mean, they just wiped her out. Then they did the same thing to Jamal Bowman in New York, and then this week they did the same thing to Cori Bush in Missouri. Now, this is not an anti-AIPAC screed. What I am saying, although I don't think that any group that is an advocate for a foreign government should be dumping money into our elections, but what I am saying is that dark money, big money, will swing elections. And the billionaires who run, the GOP know this. And they have been gathering money. I mean, so far, some $8 billion has been collected in anticipation of this election. They haven't started spending it yet, but it's coming. $8.6 billion has been raised for this year's federal campaigns. That's just the federal campaigns. $5.6 billion of that has been donated to super PACs, which were created by Citizens United in 2010 when Clarence Thomas was the deciding vote. By the way, Harlan Crow had been spiffing Clarence Thomas and gave $500,000 to his wife's organization prior to Citizens United. And then Citizens United happens, and suddenly the Crow family political donations go from hundreds of thousands a year to multiple millions a year. I mean, they just explode. And another story that I tell in the article is Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington State, north of us, had this great proposal. This was, I believe, 4 years ago. Might have been, well, I'm not sure. Anyhow, 4 years ago, more or less. And it was a carbon tax, a very small carbon tax in the state. And there was also a carbon fee and rebate program. There was a rebate where if you drove for a living, if you drove to get to work, you would get a rebate. You get money back from the carbon tax. So in other words, it wouldn't hurt people who drive their cars. And it was very popular. It had really widespread support in Washington State when it was introduced, when it was put on the ballot as a ballot measure. And then the fossil fuel industry came into Washington State and just carpet bombed the state with advertising, and they defeated the ballot measure. So the bottom line here is kind of history tells us that big money can win elections. So as giddy as we're all feeling about the fact that, Kamala is up, as many as 7 points in some polls, most are showing her, 2, 3, 4 points up over Trump, don't count your chickens. And, we still need to be working as hard as we can. We still need to get people registered to vote. We still need to be doing, door knocking and campaigning and postcard writing and phone banking and, whatever you can do. We still need to be doing that stuff. And we're going to have to do it for the next 88 days until Election Day. Because big money is, we have not yet heard from big money. And when we do, it's going to be loud. So get ready. So that's my op-ed over at HartmannReport.com. Donald Trump held a press conference yesterday at his shabby golf motel, and he lied about a bunch of things. Here's a partial list. He lied that the size of his crowds were bigger than Martin Luther King's. They were actually Martin Luther King's crowd was actually 5 times larger than Trump's. He lied that Kamala Harris wants to take away your guns. He lied that the national strategic reserves, petroleum reserves, are nearly empty. He lied that the vast majority of Americans support him. He lied that Democrats want to destroy Social Security. He lied that Democrats want to force everyone to drive an electric car. He lied that his tax cuts were the biggest in history. He lied that gas is $7, $8, $9 a gallon right now. He lied that not one soldier died in 18 months in Afghanistan while he was president. He lied that Democrats support abortions after birth. He lied when he said no one was killed on January 6th. He lied when he said inflation is caused by bad energy policies and we need to drill, baby, drill. And he lied when he said that Kamala Harris couldn't pass the bar exam. I mean, just as a starting point. But what's really amazing in my mind is how the mainstream media does not check these lies. You know, the mainstream media just kind of repeats them. Oh, this was another one. This was a really fun one. He lied that he was in a helicopter with Willie Brown. He was never in a helicopter with Willie Brown. Turns out he was in a helicopter with Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom, when he was asked about this yesterday, he said, yeah, we had that helicopter ride. There was no crash, but Trump kept worrying out loud that it was going to crash. So, and then Trump also, he lied that he was in a helicopter with Willie Brown, and then he lied saying Willie Brown was dishing dirt on Kamala Harris while he was in this helicopter that had a crash landing. All of that, you know, in my mind, these are signs of serious mental illness. This guy is not in touch with reality. He does not have a good connection to reality. I mean, have you ever seen that? My mother died of Alzheimer's, and I remember in her later years, she would mix up reality all the time. She would mix people up. She would say this person did that when it was actually another person altogether. I mean, this is, and Trump's father died of Alzheimer's, and this is not to say that I think that Trump has Alzheimer's, but he's 78 years old. I think he probably does have, age-related dementia. And do we really want a guy as president who has that kind of dementia? This is something that should concern Americans, and it should concern our press. And I want to talk about that after the break a little bit, because this is actually a very big deal and something that we should all be very concerned with.